He's on Brother from Another, pinch hitting for another from Brother from Another. And I will be on Brother from Another later on today. Does that make all sense to everybody?
Yes.
Now batting for Michael Holly. Scheduled to appear, Michael Smith. How are you, Michael? How are you, sir?
We're all brothers is what it really comes down to.
I agree.
That's basically, so we just...
Very rarely is an interview also a pre-interview for the interviewer, right? So what do you want?
Yes.
What are we going to talk about later on the show?
Dog, we're a week from football, man.
Okay.
We're a week out.
Okay. Very good.
I mean, so we can't get hype enough for football. I understand you've been helping out Brian Flores pump up Tua Tagovailoa.
I am caping for him. Yes, Michael Smith, I am.
No judgment, and I'm sure that endears you to a lot of Dolphins fans who.
So I would take it from your approach here, on what you're putting down. I appear to feel like I'm picking up that you are not believing that Tua is a starting quarterback in the NFL for the Dolphins,
Whoa,
is that too much?
No,
okay,
I never said he's not a starting quarterback.
Okay, what do you got?
I would just say that I completely understand. Now, okay, hold on. Got the obligatory moment where we say, and we can come back to this, of course.
Of course.
But the obligatory moment where we say, setting aside all of Deshaun Watson.
But you can't. You can't. That's the point.
Well, but for purposes of what I'm about to say, I can.
Okay.
But as I say, we'll come back to it. But just for purposes of what I'm about to say.
Okay.
Setting aside the sexual assault allegations, all right? I completely understand why an organization would want to upgrade from Tua Tagovailoa to a Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not everybody who has a young quarterback is looking to acquire Deshaun Watson, but I think the jury is still out on Tua Tagovailoa in a way that it is not for Joe Burrow, for example, even though he's coming off an injury, in a way that it is not, obviously, for Justin Herbert, who looks like he's a budding superstar. Okay, the jury's still out on him because, and I think the questions come from within. Because if Tua Tagovailoa, and granted he was coming off of an injury and he was a rookie quarterback, but the questions come from within the way that Brian Flores handled him last year when he was benching him in the second half in favor of Ryan Fitzpatrick, some of the, albeit anonymous, quotes that came out of the locker room about whether or not he was the guy. And the other thing that is unfair to Tua Tagovailoa is not only are we less inclined to allow quarterbacks to develop and experience the growing pains that so many quarterbacks throughout history have had to go through, is the Dolphins almost overnight went from tanking for Tua to we're a quarterback away. And so when you're a quarterback away, that's that much less patience that people tend to have. And then you bring in the Deshaun Watson pursuit, which is real from the top down. I think that's why Tua's kind of, by comparison, when you're starting to compare him to a Deshaun Watson, again, on the field, I think that's why Tua maybe doesn't get the respect that some Dolphins fans would like to see him get. I don't think he's earned it yet. I don't think he's earned it just by virtue of being the fifth pick and, winning games at Alabama. So that's all. I'm not saying he's not a starter. I'm not saying he can't be good. But going into the Deshaun part, if I may, unless you want to go ahead and cut me off there and chime in.
No. I do want to chime in. So let me. And later on, when I'm on your show, I'll do my best to take the control freak out of the host position. So, yeah. And I do want to jump in here though and say to you that in my caping yesterday, in the same way that you had your caveat of removing 22 civil cases that hang over him and the entire process and whatever else is we don't know what we don't know, we think we know everything, and grand jury and all of that stuff, that I am in removing that as well, would have had no problem the Dolphins being the first calling Nick Caserio the minute he was hired, and Deshaun Watson sent out that cryptic tweet that did actually mean that he was very displeased with Texans management. And in that period of January, all the way through to the time that we learned that there were charges coming his way civilly, I would have absolutely agreed that the Dolphins would have turned Tua, if you will, into Josh Rosen. I would not have. I would have told, like, if Watson, all things being equal, totally get it. I don't get the pursuit of the everything together, because that's the way life is. that you can't separate all of that. I don't get the pursuit of that right now on the outset of a season with Tua. That was what I said, and I don't understand where the doubt about Tua comes from. I think I've put a good grasp on it, which I'm more than happy to unpack with you.
Yeah.
Because I have thought, as you might imagine, a lot about this. So, if you want to hop back in here, let's have that conversation.
Well, I would like to hear more about the
Sure.
not understanding where the doubt comes from, but going back to the pursuit of Deshaun. Look, I do get it, and I think I can say that I get being enamored with Deshaun, all things considered. Now, we're not separating anything, all things considered.
Yep.
Because based on what it isn't so far, we know how bad it looks, but based on what it isn't so far, if you have an opportunity to get a quarterback that in the short term it may be difficult, uncomfortable, hell, he may not be available, you may, a segment of your fan base may not want him around, they may be completely sickened by these accusations and allegations, but in the long term, you got a top 5 quarterback for the long term. And eventually he's going to play football again. He's going to be available to play football again. He's going to somewhere. Why not Miami if you're Miami, right? So I understand that pursuit, looking at the big picture, saying, okay, if he's gone for 4 games or 8 games or, hell, even all this season, if we can get him at the right price, if we can get a depressed asset at the right price who wants to be here and only here, why not do it? Because he's clearly an upgrade over Tua, all things being equal. The flip side is, for me, and this is where I draw the ire of Texans Twitter, is for the same reason that if you're, and I heard you say this, for the same reason that if you're the Dolphins, why in the world would you give up 3 1s and 2 2s for a guy with 22 civil complaints and 10 criminal complaints and 3 different investigations against him, is the same reason why I don't believe the Texans can afford to take the posture of, we'll just trade him for more in March. We'll just hold on to him and we'll get more when all this is sorted out. Well, how do you know it's going to be sorted out? Like, how do you exactly know how it's going to play out? It could play out worse, number one. Number two, not going to play for you again. So he may be a franchise quarterback. He's not your franchise quarterback. Number three, he has a no-trade clause, which complicates things. And last but not least, and this is where I'm going to pass it back to you, Rich Eisen, going back to your Tua opinion, let's say you're right, and everybody has crapped on Tua completely unfairly and unjustly, and he is not getting, the benefit of the doubt that he deserves as a second-year freaking quarterback who was coming off a devastating hip injury his last year at Alabama, right? With no preseason last year. No real offseason, COVID. No, you don't hear none of those excuses for Tua Tagovailoa. It's just, let's just get somebody better. Oh, we missed. We didn't get Burrow, and we should have taken Herbert, and we missed. Right? You never hear that. What if Tua is that dude? And what if Tua balls out this year? And what if he's great? And then Brian Flores and Stephen Ross and Chris Greer's like, you know what? Sometimes it ain't the trades you make. Sometimes the ones you don't make.
Right.
So we're going to just keep our draft picks, keep our young quarterback on his rookie contract. There's one less suitor. What if your man Aaron Rodgers is on the market next year? And Denver's like, hey, Aaron, you still interested? Bam. Now Aaron Rodgers in Denver. Now you got Sam Howell. You got Spencer Rattler. You got all these different quarterbacks coming out next year. Okay, you have 5 in the first round this year. You got more coming out next year. That game of quarterback musical chairs, not saying nobody would want Deshaun Watson, don't get me wrong. I'm simply saying the marketplace could look a lot different, and you may not have as many or the obvious suitors willing to give you the price that you think you should get for an asset who's not an asset to you if he ain't playing for you.
Well, the bottom line is Michael Smith, a brother from another here on the Rich Eisen Show, is it looks like one of the most talented players in the league as he's still ascending in his talent, is going to be sitting in Deshaun Watson. And yeah. I just can't wrap my arms around that one, man. But it's I mean, we showed his depth chart. We showed the Texans' depth chart earlier. He's 3rd on the depth chart. Because it's crazy. He's
it really is.
Like legitimately, purposefully being scratched into oblivion right now in Houston. I don't know how the hell it got to this point. I honestly thought it would be over and it would be wrapped up and we would know what was going on with these cases, and the conversation would be, well, what did Deshaun really say or do, and how real was all this as we're watching him ball out for another franchise. Instead, it's completely different. I can't believe it.
And I'm glad, initially, and I know I was making a point, so I'm glad you pushed back earlier, because it's like you don't ever want to separate the very real and very serious allegations from the football. That's a disservice to the victim, and I've always tried not to center the victims, or the alleged victims, I beg your pardon, the accusers. It's a disservice to them, and I've always tried not to center the quarterback in these conversations about Deshaun Watson. But having said that, from a football and a business standpoint, because the games and the business still does go on, that's why I think if you're Houston, and I get wanting to maximize it, but I'd also want this to be somebody else's problem at this point. But that's why Nick Caserio getting all the money he's getting, and sure, he's got a good idea of how he wants this thing to play out. So, but no, I mean it's incredible that it has gotten to this point. To see somebody who just a couple of years ago was going toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes is not even a factor in the league.
Crazy.
Right now.
It's crazy. Brother from another, Michael Smith, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. And I'll bring the Tua stuff to your show later on. I want to chop it up with you there, because I want to put a pin in that for the moment. And
what else you want to talk about?
I want to know what you thought about the Ben Simmons report that he'll play for anybody but the Sixers, and what Embiid was tweeting about yesterday, where he was denying there was a rift between the two. And I guess part of that comes from him being very honest in the post-game press conference. First blush, I'm sure he had his emotions running wild after being eliminated and Simmons passing up the bunny dunk, and that was kind of the last straw with everybody in Philadelphia. What did you make of all that yesterday?
Maybe this is who I am. I'm just like, I'm not one of these people in the pretend world, in the alternate timeline, in the multiverse, where I actually am able to live out my dream of being a GM. Okay.
Yes.
I'm just not the type of GM in my head, franchise mode, Mike, okay? I'm not the kind of guy who looks at situations in terms of, well, I have a 25-year-old defensive player of the year runner-up, multiple-time All-Star, All-NBA team selection, who's a gifted passer and an excellent defender, and I am going to get heaven and earth for him. No, I look at it like, okay, he's not a good fit here. He's probably, if he can fix his shooting woes, probably ain't going to happen on the timetable we want it to happen, or we've seen no indication that he can fix it or is truly committed to fixing it in the time that he's been here, okay? And whether or not we lose the team, win the team, blah, 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 my man had 8, 6, and 5 points. Not to mention, after the game, Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid, they said the truth out loud, okay? So it is clearly uncomfortable and perhaps even untenable to return Ben Simmons here. So similar to as I was saying about Nick Caserio, ironically, now we're talking about a former Houston Rockets GM and Daryl Morey. It's like, if I'm Daryl Morey, I'm not trying to get who do I think I am asking for 4 first-round picks and two players that are all-star player for a dude that can't come back here. And now Ben Simmons has made it that much more difficult by making it clear I'm holding out, which is what every other team was probably banking on. Like, you know what, this will get messy for them. This will get worse before it gets better, because they got to get rid of Ben Simmons. So I blame Daryl Morey for having not moved on from this problem a long time ago. Instead of trying to hold the situation hostage and act like, oh, it's all good, I just so happen to want to trade Ben Simmons, the same dude I wanted to trade last year for James Harden, understandably so, but the same dude I wanted to trade last year, acting like you don't have to trade him. He should be more desperate to make the trade than other teams are to get Ben Simmons. So lower your asking price, get him up out of there, and maybe you don't get you're not going to get 100 pennies on the dollar for him. You're just not. At least not in the short term. It may not seem that way, but you get a better-fitting roster. There was a report that it was Malcolm Brogdon in the first at one point. Now, maybe one first-round pick, probably not enough, but give me that. I'll take that in a second. You know, you're probably not going to do a whole lot better than that under the circumstances. You see what I'm saying? So
I do.
Embiid was just doing the thing he had to do in case Ben Simmons comes back. Like, hey, my name is Paul. That's between y'all. My name is Ben, and I ain't in it. You know, if we're teammates, I love him. We're good. Don't look at me. It's not my fault, right? Doc will probably do something similar. to me, Daryl Morey should have figured this out instead of having this cloud hanging over them going in the training camp. He should have already made the trade by now.
What if
he's driving too hard a bargain?
What if he's waiting for Portland in that situation with
you don't know.
Lillard to I know you don't, but maybe the timelines can match because as you know, just like in any sport, deadlines spur action.
Yes.
What if he knows, and I'm sure he's got his ear to the ground, that Lillard that's a situation they're still working on, and that's kind of a ticking situation in Portland, and he's trying to wait for that.
I'm a bird hand, two in the bush kind of guy. I mean, you can count on You can count on the Blazers struggling in the first half under Chauncey Billups. You can count on Damian Lillard just being, completely checked out at the midway point. And I don't know Dame, but for what I understand, if Dame's in, he's in until he's not. And I think it would be somewhat out of character of Damian Lillard to, at midseason, decide, get me out of here by the deadline. Maybe after the season is something altogether different, right? But maybe that goes that way. Maybe. That's a big if. Maybe Bradley Beal has a change of heart and decides, you know what, I said I liked it here, but I changed my mind. Get me out of here. Okay, but you're banking on these unknowns. Bird and hands were two in the bush for me. And so in the meantime, your team is imploding. So everybody's looking around, everybody that's interested in Ben Simmons, whether it's Minnesota, whether it's Golden State, whether it's Sacramento, whoever it is, they're looking at Indiana. They're looking at you saying, okay, you're driving a hard bargain. We'll just wait. We'll just wait till you have no choice but to trade him, and your price has to come down. So they're waiting for your situation to implode while you're waiting for somebody else's situation to implode. I would just rather see them get a better-fitting roster around Embiid and move on from the situation. And for Ben Simmons' sake, listen, I was as hard on him as anybody after he put up 8, 6, and 5 in those last 3 games of the playoffs, okay? And I have no sympathy for the heat that he's gotten for coming up small the way that he did, okay? And I get why Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid were upset. Look, man, you're primarily responsible for holding us back at this point, at least on the offensive end, with all due respect to what he does on defense, and even from a passing standpoint, okay? I get all of that. He's been hung out to dry, thrown under the bus, whatever you want to say. He has been the fall guy. Like, let him go. Because this is where I do have some sympathy. Is like, he doesn't need to be brought back into this situation, given the way last year ended. Yes, he has 4 guaranteed years left, but move on from him because he would thrive in a Minnesota. If Minnesota's dreams come true and he's with Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns and maybe even D'Angelo Russell as well, I pay to see that. Let him go somewhere where he can thrive because it ain't in Philadelphia. He knows it. They know it. The rest of the league knows it. We know it. Move on.
I look forward to moving on to your show later on. I say hello to everybody there because I'm coming. I look forward to later on, Michael. Thanks for making this call.
Is that like an announcement? Like you coming with the thunder? Like you coming?
Yes.
Like you coming with some blazing hot?
Yes. I only know one speed, Michael Smith, and it's your way.
Me too, dog. That's why we vibe.
That's why we vibe.
Anything else we need to prepare for you, though? Any other topic you want to get into before you let me go?
No, you just spin whatever curveball my way, and I'll try and take it out of the park best I can. And then give thumbs up. Then thumbs up, I'll give you a
thumbs down?
No, I'm not that type of guy. It's a positive show today. Very positive. Even hearing that Tony Romo said that Zach Wilson's got the ability of Patrick Mahomes and he's going to get there in the next couple of years. Not even that's going to get me into the negative vibes of a Jet fan trying to figure out how that's not going to work. I won't do it. I'm just going to take it.
A lot of people said that, right? You just hadn't heard Romo say it?
Yeah, I've heard them say that he's got abilities like he can throw on the run, and that's what you need to do. Like it's never been he looks and reminds me of Mahomes, and he can be a top 5 talent and get there in the next couple of years. Didn't see that one coming from Romo.
I think we're going to talk about that. Just real quick. I know you got to go real quick.
Go.
And I'm sorry if this is a dumb question.
That's not.
You are, in fact, and I should know this. I'm sorry. I should know this. But you are, in fact, Nets, Jets, Knicks, correct?
No, I am. No. I am actually Jets, Yankees, Knicks. I am still Jets. I'm Yankees literally every day. We have the Yes Network on in our house. They know the entire. My kids know the entire lineup on the Yes Network.
But it's Mets, Jets, Knicks, right?
Well, it's because I'm a 52-year-old man, and anybody in my age group used to root for the teams from a certain stadium. So the Jets and Mets played in the same stadium, and then the Nets were out on Long Island at the time. So it was a Jets, Nets, Mets combination. It was Yankees, Giants, and the Knicks combination, even though the Knicks didn't play there. But I grew up, my brother was a Met fan, and so I saw the Mets early on in my life and knew I was never going to get a championship from them, certainly when I was a Jet fan, and hopped off that train. And then when the Knicks security dragged Charles Oakley out of Madison Square Garden, and James Dolan could not be bothered to move an inch from his position with his schmecky, I guess, a scarf holding his styrofoam cup of coffee. That was it for me. I was it. I'm out. You know, I'll watch him. I love Thibodeau. I love obviously what Julius Randle has done with his career. I like IQ was fun to watch, but I'm out. Now? I'm out.
Are you Brooklyn then?
I'm not Brooklyn. I'm a man without a team. I'm a man without a team. I'm all 30 clubs. That's what I'm about right now.
With that. But I was trying to find out if we should clown the Mets with you or talk seriously about the Mets as a suffering fan.
You set the tone, and I will fill in the gaps. I'll do whatever I need to do. I'll come your way.
Appreciate you. Looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.
I know. Thank you as well. That was the home, and the other day, later on, is the home. Love it. It is Brother for Another with Michael Smith and Michael Holly. I will be there. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.